course here, but are there other platforms that you're very concerned about that maybe we are not paying as much of attention to? Because obviously we're having a lot of hearings about TikTok. We're having a lot of discussions about it. What's the next thing that we're worried about?
Yeah. So in terms of those types of capabilities and platforms, I wouldn't, name a specific one. But what I will say I'm very concerned about is some of the emerging capabilities, specifically in artificial intelligence, which can be used by threat actors like China for weaponization of cyber, weaponization of genetic engineering, weaponization of bioweapons. And I'm a techno optimist generally. I've seen technology save lives and do amazing things for our national security, but I have concerns in my role to see the rapid acceleration, almost the frantic pace of the implementation of some of this technology into actual things that we're using on a daily basis. And I do not think that there are the right guardrails in place to be able to assure us that this is not going to have cascading massive impacts on our safety. So those are the things that we're starting to work on as part of our overall technology safety efforts, is the safety of artificial intelligence, because I think we're going too fast and we don't know what's at the other end. And I think our adversaries can use this technology in very, very damaging ways, and we need to more fully understand that.
Right, they're weaponizing that information, as you said, to influence as well. But you did mention something that's very important there, technology used to save lives, which is a critical part of our mission, I think, as members of Congress, but also in what you do. And in my district in Iowa, we obviously know how important it is to make sure that those safety tools and emergency communication systems are up and running well, and that they can deliver that life-saving information, those alerts to people. We saw a failure in Iowa recently. We had some tornadoes about a year ago, and some people died. So I would just be encouraged to hear a little bit more from you about what steps CISA is doing to ensure that our emergency comms networks are resilient, strong, and operating correctly, so we can avoid having a repeat of what happened in Iowa.
Yeah, thanks so much for that question. So our emergency communications division is so important. It really grew out of the entities that came out of 9/11, SAFECOM, and now the National Council for Statewide Interoperable Coordinators. So what we work on, along with all of we have ECCs, Emergency Comms Coordinators, in every region. We are focused on working with the public safety community and the emergency responders to ensure that their comms are secure, resilient, and interoperable. So, of course, it's emergency communications month coming up in April, and we've got a full court press to make sure that we are bringing on more of these entities into our government emergency telecommunication system and our wireless priority system. So when there are significant hazards or incidents, we can switch over to those capabilities and can be able to provide that same emergency comm. So day in, day out, working on collaborative planning, working on creating resilience. We're providing tools and assistance to the public safety community, and just incredibly important. And I'd love to follow up with you on this, because I think our work in this space is, it's only really noticed when you have incidents like you had in Iowa, when you can't use your 911, but critical to the security of the nation.
Yeah, and obviously the derecho came through, and people had no way to communicate even with the governor's office. In my community, they were trying to get a hold of her, and they couldn't, right? I mean, so that's a huge challenge. So I think what's important is redundancies there to make sure that you mentioned resilience, but obviously our threat actors that we're competing with and trying to counter, they're obviously looking for any vulnerability there. So that's a huge concern. And I want to wrap up with just a question about supply chain vulnerabilities as far as hard infrastructure is concerned, because obviously we are coming out of a major pandemic. We learned a lot of lessons about the supply chain in general, but what do you see as the biggest challenges there in terms of threats or vulnerabilities?
Yeah, I think the biggest issue, and we run, as you probably know, the Information Communications Technology Supply Chain Risk Management Task Force with many of our partners. But I just say that the biggest issue are that some of these supply chains are run by small businesses. And so these entities are part of this target-rich, cyber poor group of people that, the person doing HR is the person doing IT, is the person doing finance. And some of these entities are within our critical infrastructure. And so one of the things I was most excited about is we created these cybersecurity performance goals. Now, the gold standard for risk management is the NIST cybersecurity framework, and that's what we used at Morgan Stanley, for example. But if you're a small business, you look at that and it's just intimidating. So what we wanted to do was really take that document and distill it down to less than 40 things that can be done, characterized by cost, complexity, and impact to drive down risk. And we're most excited about being able to use that into some of these small companies that sit within the supply chain to really materially drive down risk, because that'll make us all safer, just given how interconnected, how digitized, and how vulnerable we are because of some of those supply chain components. The last thing I'd say is we need to also look at some of the Chinese technology that's within our supply chains. FCC has a list of some of this technology that they are looking to come out of communications, but we are actually, because we have vulnerability scanning of the public internet, we can see some of these technologies in critical infrastructure. We've actually done outreach now to, I think, 120 entities to let them know, hey, you've got Huawei, you've got Hikvision, you've got ZTE, you need to, you should think to pull that out because it's creating risk in your network. So we need to do that as well.
Well, thank you, Director Easterly, and I look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, to maybe act on some of those challenges that she just mentioned. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Henson. Recognizing Mr. Cloud for this initial round of